Unfortunately, computing does not come without downfalls. What are some problems that you see in the digital world? In general, the downfalls of computing fall into a couple of categories: intentional use of computing to do damage and unintentional negative side effects. We will talk about examples of both. Computing has changed the way that those with bad intentions can commit crimes and brought about a new term, cybercrime. Cybercrime is a criminal act that involves the use of computer networks to commit criminal acts. Cybercrime includes fraud, hacking, identity theft, creating computer viruses, malware, DDoS attacks, phishing, cyberstalking, software piracy, and cyberbullying. We will talk more about these types of attacks in the Data and Privacy Unit, including how to keep yourself safe. For now, it's just important to know that the intentional misuse of computing for the purpose of committing cybercrime is one of the most dangerous downfalls in the digital world. Aside from malicious computer usage, there are also unintentional downfalls in the world of computing. These include programmer bias, privacy infringement, and inequitable access to technology and the internet. One unintended problem with life in the digital age is programmer bias. Bias refers to favor given to something based on one's own prejudices or life experience. Even without trying, one's perception of the world creates bias. If programmer bias is not tempered, there can be unintended consequence. As we begin to depend more on programmed devices in the future, unchecked bias can become more serious. We see the effects of programmer bias when beta tests of new versions of software or hardware are released. The general public is a great resource for identifying programmer bias. If the programmers and initial testers of a new piece of software did not account for a group of people, a certain look, or a specific language, and release their product to the public often provides this feedback. Algorithmic bias refers to systematic and repeatable errors in computer systems that create unfair outcomes, such as privileging one arbitrary group of users over another. A frequent way we see algorithmic bias affect our lives is through trending information on social media platforms. An algorithm gathers all of the information that you, as a user on social media, contribute. This means that the algorithm takes the topics you like, share, retweet, or comment on, and adjusts what you are viewing on your newsfeed or homepage. This gives a bias to the topics you are interested in by providing you with similar information. But then we need to consider, does this only show you one side of a story? Another unintended consequence of your digital footprint is privacy infringement. Every site you visit on the internet is connected to you. Every purchase you make online, and even in-store purchases when using electronic payment methods, is connected to you. All of your social media posts and articles that you share create a permanent digital footprint. This footprint is used by data miners to predict the type of things you might want to see. They use this information to target ads, news pop-ups, and even suggest groups and organizations that you might like. A common joke goes something like this. The other day, I was talking about wanting a new puppy, and today an ad for dog food popped up on my browser. Has this ever happened to you? It's funny, but also a little creepy. In a world where almost everything is connected to the internet, there are concerns that our privacy is at risk. Another downfall of life in a digital world is the digital divide. The digital divide refers to the gap between those who have access to the internet and computers and those who do not. As society relies more and more on computers for working in the world and the internet to share information, those without access are at risk to be left behind. Here you can see the drastic difference in internet access between the developed world and the developing world. The chart on the previous slide only shares raw data about access to the internet. It does not differentiate between internet speed. The amount of people in the global population with high-speed internet access is smaller still. So what factors determine whether a person has access to the internet and computers? Infrastructure, geographic barriers, government restrictions, and socioeconomic status. Infrastructure is the physical and organizational structures that exist to provide basic necessities in society. Examples of infrastructure include paved roads and highways, electrical grids, and safe systems for delivering drinking water to the population. Infrastructure also includes the hardware and systems that are necessary to provide the high-speed internet to homes, schools, and businesses. Geographic barriers also play a part in the digital divide. Even those living in countries with modern infrastructure may still lack access to high-speed internet due to geographic barriers if they live in rural areas or in areas with geographic features like mountains that make it difficult to run network cables. In some countries, governmental restrictions limit access to the internet or to certain sites on the internet. Sometimes these restrictions limit access to the internet by making access so expensive that it is unlikely that a family will be able to afford internet access. In other countries, like North Korea, the government limits access so that only certain websites are reachable inside the country. Another factor that impacts what side of the digital divide you find yourself on is socioeconomic status. Those of the population who are less affluent have lower amounts of disposable income and can be limited in their access to computers. While many tout low-cost smartphones as a way to level the playing field, it is a simple fact that smartphones are not enough. As reliance on the internet and internet-enabled devices becomes more prolific, the digital divide will continue to widen. In addition to limiting access to consumer products, the real price of the digital divide is related to information access, participation as a citizen in the digital world, and use of the tools of computing for productivity. All of the benefits we described previously in this presentation are lost to an entire group of the world's population simply because they live in remote areas or do not have adequate disposable income to access computers. It is easy to think of the digital divide as an aspect of life found only in developing nations. However, residents of the United States are not immune to falling behind in the digital divide. Here are some statistics. 40% of schools and 60% of healthcare facilities outside metropolitan areas lack high-speed internet access. 26% of those making less than $30,000 per year rely on their smartphones as their only way to go online, while only 5% of those making over $100,000 do. This gap has widened significantly since 2013. Other factors that magnify the digital divide in America include race and level of education.